computer. Okay, so here's our second night of our Founding Fathers series, and we have Brad. What?
I don't see him.
Yeah.
You don't see him pinned? Oh, I have him pinned on mine. You have to pin him on your own. I pin him here so that when I'm recording, it just shows him. So,
Gotcha.
So Brad is going to go ahead and start on his presentation tonight.
All right, let's go.
Oh.
So I got Governor Morris. So when we kind of decided to do this, my reasoning for picking this guy was I Googled interesting founding fathers, and this was one of them that popped up. And he's got some interesting and funny things, and I had never heard of him before doing that Google search, so I figured I'd roll with that one. So he was born in January of 1752 in what is now the Bronx, New York. He is kind of the antithesis of coming from a divided family from the Revolutionary War. One of his half-brothers was actually a signer of the Declaration of Independence, while another half-brother was a British loyalist who moved to Canada after the war was complete. During the war, he played a pivotal role in keeping George Washington as the commanding general of the Continental Army. He actually cast a deciding vote to keep him as the commanding general of the army during what is called the Conway Cabal. And that's another thing I had never heard of. So the Conway Cabal was a Major General Thomas Conway, who was really searching for promotion and kind of moving forward in his military career, actually had letters intercepted that he was sending to a General Horatio Gates, who had actually led the Battle of Saratoga and was performing very well with his troops. General Gates was actually gaining favor and was a potential candidate to replace George Washington had he been replaced. So due to kind of these letters going back and forth in correspondence, one of the things that General Gates had done is he actually jumped the chain of command after the Battle of Saratoga. He was supposed to send kind of report to General Washington, and he didn't. He sent it directly to the Congress, skipping over him, and that just kind of, was just part of kind of everything that went into that. But ultimately, when those in charge of kind of determining who the general was, who was in charge of the war, it came down to one vote, and Governor Morris actually voted to retain George Washington. If he had voted the other way, George Washington would have been removed from command of the Continental Army via court-martial. Some of the founders that actually supported removing Washington were those like Richard Henry Lee, John Adams, and Samuel Adams. So eventually, in part because of this, over time, General Conway, who this is obviously named after, the Conway Cabal, he did end up getting the promotion, but he was kind of ostracized in some ways. And he actually had an interaction with a General Cadwalader who challenged him to a duel. And on July 4th, 1778, they had their duel, and General Cadwalader shot General Conway through the cheek and is quoted as saying, "I have stopped that damn rascal's lying tongue at any rate." So General Conway did recover. I don't know how well he was able to speak after that, but while he was recovering, he wrote George Washington an apology letter for the Conway Cabal, in which George Washington never responded. So interesting kind of piece of history with his role in that Conway Cabal and deciding the fate of George Washington in a lot of ways, who won the war and, kind of the whole foundation of this country in a lot of ways. Governor Morris is actually the youngest signer of the Articles of Confederation. He was representing New York at the time. He's somebody who considers himself a Federalist, so favoring a strong federal government. Kind of like Alexander Hamilton was somebody he was politically aligned with. He served in Congress for a few years. He lost his seat, I believe in 1778 or 1779, but in 1780, after losing his seat, he was in a carriage accident and had his left leg amputated below the knee. Despite not having a military obligation, he did join the New York Guard as what they call the Briefs Club. So kind of just giving briefs is kind of what I understand, and utilizing his written word. During the Constitutional Convention, he actually was the man who gave the most speeches. So he gave 173 speeches at the convention, again, more than anybody else. Some of the things that he was really big on was the freedom to practice in any religion whatsoever. He's quoted as saying slavery is it's incongruent that a slave was both a man and property at the same time. So he was a very anti-slavery founding father. And his most famous contribution, probably of all, is rewriting the preamble of the Constitution to where it now says, "We the people of the United States." Prior to that, it was going to say, "We the people of," and it was going to list the colonies from north to south. So, Maine, Vermont, Connecticut, and just kind of go down like that. So he was kind of coined with changing the verbiage in a lot of ways. Maybe possibly the most famous words in the United States history.
Wow.
So outside of that, some interesting facts. He's considered a ladies' man, so he's known to have many affairs. He was not married till later in life, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But one of the people he had an affair with was a famous French novelist whose name I cannot pronounce. But she actually lived at what is now the Louvre. So he was having an affair with a novelist who was married to a count in the Louvre. He shared that same mistress with another man, Charles Maurice de Talleyrand. If anybody knows who that is, he's a huge reason why we were able to make the Louisiana Purchase from France. He was a French diplomat and kind of fostered that. He was serving kind of as an ambassador to France during the French Revolution. He's actually, I believe, the only American diplomat, if he's not the only one, he was one of very few, who stayed through the worst of the revolution. So he was there when Marie Antoinette and all them got decapitated and all that good stuff. And one of the things he did in true politician fashion is he lied. So during the French Revolution, he took his fake leg off, lifted it in the air, and riled up the crowd by saying that he lost his leg fighting for liberty in America, when actually it was in a carriage accident. So he may be the first true politician in American history. That's debatable. Most of them probably were. He considered a lot of people consider him to be kind of an elitist snob. He was kind of a very aristocratic type, kind of looked down on some people in a lot of ways. And kind of last couple small things is he got married in 1809, kind of late in his life. Remember, he was born in 1752, so he was in his 50s. He married his wife, who was in her 30s. His wife is Anne Carey Randolph, and prior to meeting, or maybe not meeting, but definitely before they became a couple, she was actually accused of murdering a baby in 1793, doing an affair she was having with a married man. So the man in that case went to trial and was ultimately acquitted. And she moved up north away from where she was at the time and eventually married Gouverneur Morris. They had one son. And when about 7 years after he was married, he died on 6 November 1816 in gory fashion after getting a blockage in his urinary tract. He stuck a whalebone up his penis.
Oh my God.
In fact, it was infected, and he ultimately died from the infection trying to clear the urinary tract. It was something he had had multiple issues with in the past, and this time it just didn't go well for him. So in some ways, I considered him maybe the first libertarian, having all the affairs and freedom, religion, wanting slavery to be abolished because, you can't be property and a man at the same time. But a very interesting, colorful character, to say the least. There you go. There's Gouverneur Morris.
Wow.
Yay!
Thank you, Brad. That was
Good job, Brad.
Good job.
informative and wow.
Little Corey.
And entertaining.
Yes, entertaining. I think I really enjoyed hearing about him recoining the first line of of the
Yes.
but wow, he's a character.
Yeah, that's an interesting cat. And I think when you think of 1700s, early 1800s, you don't necessarily think of a peg-legged ladies' man.
No.
And that's who wrote the preamble to the Constitution.
Wow.
So Brad, why do you think that with such a colorful story, he's been so unheard of?
Well, he wasn't really a big he didn't have a big role as far as like Congress. He wasn't a big time senator or congressman. He was active in a lot of ways, but when you think of kind of the founding fathers, you think of the guys that wrote the James Madisons, the Thomas Jeffersons, or guys that were president, George Washington, John Adams. You think of those guys first, and he didn't really do those things.
But he signed the Articles of Confederation and
did.
was at the Constitutional Convention. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but it was just one of those guys. And I don't know, maybe in some ways, especially historically, there's a certain story that you want to tell. And I think his story might have been one people didn't want to tell. The way he died, they're probably not going to put that in the history books. George Washington went back to Martha's Vineyard and, died of pneumonia, at an old age, if I remember correctly, Daniela. So it's not really
Mount Vernon, not Martha's Vineyard, Mount Vernon. I think you said Martha's Vineyard. Yeah.
I might have said that, but yeah. But yeah, so he definitely just doesn't have a story that, especially when you're trying to paint this picture of America, he doesn't have that story. There are people that don't have their story told. There's, the Freedom Riders weren't just Paul Revere, right? Like Paul Revere wasn't the only guy running around on a horse telling people the British were coming, but he was the guy that got the credit for it. And that's kind of my hypothesis, but I don't truly know.
So how come with Governor Morris, we didn't see you dressed up as Morris the cat?
I don't even know.
You don't know who Morris the cat is?
Not off the top of my head. I might know it if I saw it.
Oh my God, I guess that is for
Garfield
old
cat.
people. Morris the cat was just like a famous orange advertising cat from like the mid 80s, early 80s. I guess you're too young.
Frisky's cat food, the canned cat food.
Okay.
He doesn't know who Morris the cat is? Oh, I
It's interesting when you read these stories of the time about these people involved with it, the Constitution, like everybody knew everybody. And it seemed like such a small world. And even across the ocean, people seem to know people in Paris that they knew in the US. Like it's like everybody was so connected.
Elites hang out with elites.
Well, I mean, so many came from England to begin with. So, they're close to France and the other countries over there to begin with. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
A lot of them were born here and shipped back there for education.
Right.
Right. That was George Washington's brother, Lawrence. That's what he did and was such the influence on George Washington because that was, so prestigious to go back for your education in Europe.
I think Governor Morris's leg was made out of the cherry tree that George Washington chose.
I'm sure that's what he told everybody.
Oh my God. Okay, we need some kind of pun about the whale bone.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I think I think you can go a lot of ways with whalebone in that particular region of the body.
Maybe that's why they call it a boner now.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's
This
definitely.
was really supposed to be more PG rated, but that's.
And I think that would definitely, I think that would explain why he had a futon over in France, right? She's like, bring it on, brother. And because she had another guy too. So
Oh, boy.
wow.
Yikes.
Go see the
Well,
Mona Lisa. I think the Mona Lisa's at the Louvre, right? Am I right with that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go see the Mona
Yeah.
Lisa. You might be in the bedroom, that he was hanging out with his little mistress.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Well, she was Italian though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and Pano one a little bit before that, I think.
Yeah. Painted a couple times. So, but anyhow. All right. Well, thank you, Brad, for the enlightening stories of Governor Morris. All right. So next up, if Dan and Joanna Griffin are ready, they are presenting on Thomas Jefferson tonight.
All right.
Let me unpin, yes, and pin them up here.
Okay. All right, we have a PowerPoint.
Oh, sweet. So
We're gonna figure out how to
let
put
me
it
make
on
sure you
there.
can share.
Right, so how do you share this?
Okay, there should be a little green share screen button,
Okay,
and you should be able to go ahead and pick where your PowerPoint is and hit it and hit the share button.
and share. Okay.
Yep.
Oh,
There we go. Perfect.
All right.
Oh, look at how fancy.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah. And then you can hit your slideshow. Your F5 button should start your slideshow, or you can slideshow and hit start, and then you can use your arrows to go through.
Okay.
So
all right, we're ready. We're doing Thomas Jefferson, and he's quite an interesting little fellow. Let's start with, he was often referred to as the last Renaissance man because he was one of the most accomplished presidents. His accomplishments was he was a president, politician, inventor, archaeologist, a naturalist, author, educator, lawyer, architect, and violinist and philosopher. Okay, you want to remote control my screen?
yeah, so I can get your slideshow going, because we're not seeing the slideshow over here. So
Okay.
are you seeing it on your other? Do you have two screens?
Do I have two screens?
Yeah.
Yes, I have
Okay.
two screens up here.
Ah, that's why. So go ahead and stop sharing and then share just the PowerPoint one instead of your screen. And then it should demo it, because we were seeing the side, the whole panes and everything. So I was going to make it.
Okay, so share screen.
Yep. And then there should be one that just shows your PowerPoint. It should say your PowerPoint instead of a screen.
PowerPoint, share.
And let's see if it starts. There we go. Now we can see it like you meant for it. We weren't seeing the whole presentation. We were just seeing your PowerPoint
There you go.
planning thing up. It looks perfect now. Okay.
Okay,
So continue on.
all right.
Early years. Let's see, he was born in April 13th, 1743 at Shadwell Plantation, which is located near Charlottesville, Virginia. He was third in the line of 8 children, 6 sisters and a younger brother. His father, Peter, was a planter and a surveyor, but that wasn't considered a noble profession.
Oops, we're missing something. Go ahead.
His mother, Jane Randolph Jefferson, came from a distinguished family. She was the person who put him in the higher class society. At the age of 19, he graduated from the College of William and Mary. It's said that he enjoyed studying, sometimes 15 or more hours a day.
Wow.
And then he practiced the violin the balance of the day. And even though he went to college, most of his learning was self-taught. I guess he had a passion for learning. After college, he studied law under the guidance of a Virginia attorney, George Wythe. back then, no formal law school existed. And he was 24 when he started working as a lawyer. He married a widow, Martha Wales Skeleton, at the age of 29. They had 6 children together, but only 2 daughters survived, Martha and Mary.
Hmm.
And then his wife died at the age of 33. I guess marriage was rough back then.
I guess so. It's tough now.
It says he never remarried. The word is he enjoyed the company of his wife's half-sister, who also happened to be a slave. And he wound up fathering other children with her.
Monticello was the house that he had built, or the mansion. Okay. He had designed it himself. It was on a mountaintop on the Shadwell plantation. He had inherited from his dad. He started clearing the land for the brick mansion known as Monticello. He designed the home himself, expanding and remodeling it over the next 40 years. And that's where he was considered the architect. He also loved gardening and kept a garden journal about his plantings. And he kind of sounded like he's got some sort of an OCD there going, because he kept records of everything, like the daily weather reports that were going on there, the gardening notes on what he was planting, how he was planting, how it came out, what he needed to do, what he couldn't do. And then he also kept a lot of notes on his slaves and the animals that he had. He inherited over 600 slaves. Well, he inherited from his father and father-in-law, and he ended up having at least 600 slaves. Most of them were all under the age of 16. And that to me was kind of like, ooh, wow. 80 of them lived in Monticello. Most of them from the Hemmings family. And the rest were spread out on the remaining parts of his farms and other buildings there. Hemmings was the only family that were freed slaves when he died.
Okay, now for his political works. From 1769 to 1775, he was a member of Virginia's House of Burgesses. And he entered that when he was 26 years old. In 1774, he wrote the Summer Review of the Rights of British America. And that book, it laid out the grievances against King George III and declared that Britain did not have the right to govern the 13 colonies. In 1775, he became a member of the Second Continental Congress. And in 1776, he drafted the Declaration of Independence. And he was a ripe old age of 33 then.
Crazy.
Let's see. And during that drafting, it said there was a 2-day debate over the wording. And Jefferson didn't like people changing his writings, but eventually it was agreed on. And they printed 200 copies. That was printed by John Dunlap and was signed August 2nd of 76. And there's only one actually signed copy of the Declaration, and that's on display in the National Archives. Oh, what else did he do? Late 1776, he served as a member of the House of Delegates of Virginia. And in the late 1770s, he authored another book called The Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. Well, I guess that wasn't a book, that was a statute, and they passed that in 1786. That was the first attempt to remove influence of government from religious establishments. that separation of church and state.
Yep.
Let's see, 1779 to 17.
Uh-oh.
There, he authored and published a book, Notes on the State of Virginia. 1783, he did a second stint in the Congress of the Confederation. 1784, he became Trade Commissioner of France. And 1785, he took over as the U.S. Minister of France, where he studied European culture. I got another one. Yeah, I do. Okay, in 1790,
There you go.
he was the first Secretary of State under the Washington administration. Let's see, in early 1790, he clashed with Alexander Hamilton, who was then Secretary of the Treasury. Well, for several reasons, but the main reason was a disagreement over Hamilton's creation of the Bank of the United States.
Huh.
Jefferson believed it was unconstitutional because it was not a power specifically granted in the Constitution.
Wow.
And he then resigned in 1793. Let's see, what did he do after that? Well, he founded, with the help of James Madison, the Democratic Republican Party, which was, it favored strong state and local government over Hamilton's Federalist Party, which was more strong national government. In 1797, he became vice president to John Adams. He lost the presidential bid by 3 votes.
Wow.
That was a close one.
Yeah.
In 1801, he was finally elected 3rd president of the United States at the age of 57. And the most notable accomplishment of his presidency was he purchased the Louisiana Territory, which doubled the size of the US.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he signed the Insurrection Act. And the reasoning behind that was Burr's plot to create an army to invade Mexican territories in order to acquire or own Southwest territories. He wouldn't give the authority to deploy active duty military to stop that rebellion because the authority was not specifically granted in the Constitution. His political enemies took another view. If the Constitution doesn't outright condemn it, then it's okay. Yeah, where have we heard that before?
I was just thinking that.
And thus he asked Congress to pass the Insurrection Act, and it was signed in 1807, 11 days after they captured Burr.
Yeah, it was quite interesting to listen to that one. All right, I guess these slides were off. Anyway, the Revolution of 1800. It never really was a revolution, but that's what kind of Jefferson coined it as, is the Revolution of 1800. And that's where Jefferson and Burr and Adams and Pinckney ended in a tie, which exposed the flaw of the US Constitution, where each delegate would get 2 votes. The person with the most won the presidency, the second most was the vice president. This was a mean and bitter campaign between the candidates. They were each slandering and demonizing each other, kind of like today's campaigns. So each party then devised a plan where one of their respective electors was supposed to vote for a third candidate or abstain so that its preferred candidate would win. Adams was for the Federalist and Jefferson for the Democratic Republicans. One would win more vote than the other party, but true to nature, the Democratic Republicans failed to execute it properly, and their plan to award Jefferson one more vote than Burr resulted in a 73-73 tie. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Now there's the tiebreaker, which was where the House of Representatives were to vote to decide the president at that point. Well, it took 36 ballots, 36 times that they came to get a final winner. Well, on the 36th vote, Hamilton disliked Burr so much more than he disliked Jefferson. He didn't like either one of them, but he would rather have had Jefferson win over Burr. So he persuaded a bunch of delegates to vote for Jefferson, which then deemed him the winner. So it was finally over. Jefferson didn't trust Burr very much during his presidency after the election, so he gave him nothing to do, which kind of sounds familiar today.
Yep.
So then the 12th Amendment was
Good one.
ratified in 1804 to fix that problem, and it made it so the elections were required to vote separately for the president and then the vice president. Okay.
Okay, contradictions haunting his legacy. Haunting his legacy is the fact that he was a slave owner. And he wrote in the Declaration that all men are created equal. Okay, he publicly opposed slavery, saying it was morally offensive and described the practice as a crime against humanity. And he had what, 600 slaves?
Oh my gosh.
At
He
least.
criticized slavery in a passage written in the original draft of the Declaration, but that passage was deleted. It's believed to have been deleted to appease South Carolina and Georgia, but they say the real reason will probably never be known. It's also believed that he fathered 5 or more children with his sister, his wife's sister, half-sister, who was a slave, Sally Hemings.
Here's some fun facts.
Now the fun facts. Interesting reads. Okay. He created the Army Corps of Engineers.
Wait a minute, you missed
Oh.
one. Where'd it go?
What does that mean? I missed one.
He was the first.
You got that one.
Mm-mm.
Well, we're having
Oh, I
fun.
guess I do. Sorry. Okay. He was the first to hold Inauguration Day ceremony in DC. He was against tyrannical governments and didn't want the perception that he was king or more superior. So he ended that tradition of bowing and then started shaking hands and greeting people. Okay. He started the new tradition where he would walk to and from the inauguration ceremony rather than being in a horse-drawn carriage. He also started the tradition of the Marine Band playing at the inauguration celebration. So he was the first one that invited them. He was also the first president, or the first time that a succeeding president did not attend the inauguration ceremony. And that was because John Adams said he did not attend because he was too distraught after losing that election. And also his son was, died of alcoholism. He refused to endorse a day of Thanksgiving while he was the president because he believed strongly of the separation of church and government. And he wasn't endorsing such a holiday that he believed was a responsibility of each individual state. And that earned him the reputation of being anti-Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Yeah. And he also liked to casually dress down. And he was known to greet his guest at the White House in his robe and slippers. Such a fun man.
He's a guy's guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Poor guys.
Now it's
Not your
me?
turn.
Okay, now it's my turn. Okay, he created the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yay, whoops. That's what's happening. Sorry, I keep hitting the mouse button.
Okay, in 1802, he established the United States Military Academy in West Point, New York, on the Hudson to train Republican officers.
Mhm.
Oh, it said he had pet mockingbirds. One was named Dick and was a pet at the White House. I guess that was, well,
Never mind.
yeah, we won't talk about Dick in the White House. He donated his collection of books to the Library of Congress. I guess that was after it burnt.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, after it was rebuilt in 1815. Okay, during his European stint, he developed a love for ice cream. He helped popularize it here in the US. And it said he left behind what may have been the first recipe in America for ice cream, consisting of 6 egg yolks, half a pound of sugar, 2 bottles of cream, and 1 vanilla bean.
Mm.
Sounds good to me.
He was the first to grow tomatoes in Virginia. And he had the audacity to eat them in front of people and enjoy watching their shocked faces.
Nobody ever seen it. It's just disgusting. So
Amazing.
Oh, the question is, did he put
brought
salt
back
or
knowledge
sugar?
of,
okay, sorry. What was that?
I was saying, the question is, did he put salt or sugar on it?
Oh,
Mhm.
I don't think he had either one.
Well, if he liked ice cream, maybe you put sugar on it.
yeah. He brought back knowledge of deep fried slices of potatoes,
First one try.
and he liked serving them to guests at the White House.
Mhm. French
Wow.
fries.
Ice cream, tomatoes, and French fries. I love this.
Oh,
He was a connoisseur from, when he was over in Europe. He loved foods and studying
Well, because
gardening.
he got the munchies from the opium.
I guess so.
the best one is he grew opium in his home gardens. And
Yeah.
he continued growing, well, somebody continued growing them in 91 when I guess, DEA or somebody says you got to stop doing that. It's kind of illegal.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Now, he was also noted for inventions, but a lot of these inventions that they claim he did was just really innovations and improved on things. Like the macaroni machine. He brought back a macaroni machine from Italy, and he did create the drawing of the machine with the detailed notes. So he didn't actually create the macaroni machine because he loved macaroni. He brought back and he kind of, I don't know, what would you say it was?
No, he reverse engineered it.
Reverse engineered it, so it's wrote it all down kind of thing. The polygraph, all right, he abandoned his copying press, and for the rest of his life, he used exclusively his polygraph machine. A lot of people are saying he's the one that developed that, but it was actually invented by Hawkins and Peel. And what he would do would send suggestions for improvements to them, and they were often used in his new designs, So he didn't actually invent that. He also, while serving with George Washington as the Secretary of State, he devised an ingenious, easy, and secure method to encode and decode messages. So that, they call it the wheel cipher. but historians are not really sure if he was the first to invent that, so who knows?
Hmm.
And also he learned or enjoyed reading so much that he invented a book stand that would hold 5 books open at one time and revolve all around, so he can, enjoy different passages from different books and kind of cross-checked all his readings. And then he did not invent the dumbwaiter, but he made a design improvement on it, where at his home in Monticello, he hid the dumbwaiter on the side of his fireplace. And that way he can deliver the wine from downstairs straight up to, his dining room quicker. They also made a lot of, dumbwaiters at the White House. What they did was they took carts and put them on wheels. So he considered that as an invention also.
Hmm.
So that he could put his plates and stuff on the table, and they would just wheel it away and bring, back the next course.
Beginnings of room service.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then he and his son-in-law did invent the iron plow, which would dig deeper than 2 to 3 inches that the standard plow did back then. And it also helped prevent the soil erosion on the Virginia hills. So he did do that as an invention. Okay.
Oh, some of his notable accomplishments.
We're-
He wrote his own epitaph, emphasizing his 3 most notable accomplishments. And that was, let's see, here was buried Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, of the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, and father of the University of Virginia. Let's see, the father of the University of Virginia, he chartered it, picked the location, designed the buildings, planned the curriculum, and served as the first head of the school. And let's see, I don't know how you call it. The day he died was July 4th, 1826.
Wow.
The same day as his nemesis, John Adams. Said they died 5 hours apart,
Wow.
which was also the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. It seems him and John Adams were the best of friends until they spoke to each other for the next 12 years. But they say after that, they began to have a pen pal friendship until their deaths. Yeah,
That was it.
talk about doing things together.
Well, thank you. That was awesome. Woo!
It certainly
Wow.
wasn't anything like, Danielle's, but.
Wow.
Yours was
Actually-
so pretty too, just to look at how you did
Yeah.
the layout. It was very elegant.
Thanks. There was a lot of neat information on him, as far as the inventing things, everybody kept saying he invented, but the more I looked and more I looked up, they weren't inventions, he was just improving upon them.
He sounded very much like a Michelangelo, Benjamin Franklin type, where they have
Yeah.
their finger in many pots and they're inventing and they're super
Mhm.
intelligent, but like you said, maybe OCD about it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the first thing I thought. It was all the notes that he would take, so I was like, oh man, I bet she's OCD.
Yeah. So do they have those notes anywhere? Did they say, are they like in my?
There's actually a book of them, yes.
Oh,
They're
really?
all the notes. He's got the gardening book that they published. It's on the monticello.org site.
Really?
Yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, I actually kind of liked him. I mean, I know he was kind of a hypocrite when it came to slavery, but he sounded like he had I don't know, he just the idea man, he just would kind of expand on things and
a lot of things, yeah.
and I really, really liked that he kept saying that it's not in the Constitution, it's not constitutional.
I bet he
And
was
he
really
was a-
fun to have conversations with because he was he knew so many different things that I mean, his interests lied in different areas that you could probably converse with him for hours.
Yeah.
Actually, I like that you talked a little bit about his relationship with John Adams, and I don't remember who is going to do that or not, but I think John Adams' last words were
Yep.
"Long live Thomas Jefferson," and Jefferson had actually died a few hours earlier.
Yeah, I think it was more like he said something in the sense of,
My internet froze. What did he say?
he said, at least Jefferson still lives.
Uh,
He at that point didn't know that he already died. So
oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's also interesting that his epitaph that he wrote did not list that he was president of the United States.
no,
mm-mm.
I guess he didn't deem that as one of his better accomplishments.
Right?
Yeah. So Brad had noted in the chat that Governor Morris's wife was related to Thomas Jefferson's wife.
oh, well, I
Interesting.
didn't really think that.
Yeah, and they were like cousins or something, so they weren't.
Well, back
Super
then there
close.
wasn't a whole lot of people around, so they probably intermingled a lot.
That's true.
It
That's true.
was kind of cool, like we just talked about how everybody's kind of connected in a lot of ways, and then
Yeah,
Jefferson's wife is cousins with Governor Morris's wife, and then I was talking about the Frenchman who sold the Louisiana Purchase and who was the president when that happened.
Yeah, Jefferson was president then.
this
Plus,
is really
I didn't know he was a violinist or that he had so many siblings. He almost seems like an only child to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he did many different instruments, but violin was his most favorite, and that's one he really concentrated on. But he,
Yeah, I didn't realize that either.
mhm.
And I actually had one of the descendants from Sally Henning or Hemmings or
Hemmings,
Hemmings come speak at my school when I was in middle school or high school, and it was really kind of cool to hear their story.
Huh.
Wow.
I liked how, because that's one of the things I was going to maybe bring up a little bit, is that you said he's kind of alleged to have had an affair with her and had a child, but there's kind of conflicting things. It may have been one of his siblings that was actually the one that was having the affair with her. It's not 100% sure. They believe it was him, but like there's
Right.
still some ambiguity with that. They don't know for sure. They know that the children are related to Jefferson very closely. They just don't know if they're his.
Yeah. Well, he only had one brother, you said, right? 6 sisters and a younger brother.
I think only the 2 sisters survived, though.
Right.
No, that was from his marriage.
Oh, that was from his marriage. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
So there would have only
He had
been
2
that one
daughters.
brother that it could have been. So,
Something I didn't do the research today, but that's something that was kind of in the back of my mind that I had heard at some point. So when I heard alleged, I was like, okay, maybe there is something to that.
yeah, because it could have been his one other brother, but his 6 sisters and wow, and a younger
Yeah,
brother.
I think they're doing DNA, so I think there is one possibility that's definitely related, but
Mm. Mm.
hard to do DNA at that point, way back.
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody's touching Thomas Jefferson's body at this point.
No.
You don't mess with that.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a lot. Yours was packed with information. I can't believe. I mean, there's so much about him I had never heard of before. So that was very cool, very informative. Thank you.
Yay.
I can't wait till we hear the next one.
Yep. So the next one should be Kathy. Kathy is going to speak about Thomas Paine next week, or not next week, but in 2 weeks. And Jim Larkin will hopefully presenting himself and information on George Mason. So, so we hope that we can see Jim in a couple weeks and he can talk about his favorite, he said. So I'm anxious to hear. But well, on that note, I'm going to hit stop recording. And then if anybody wants to hang out longer, they can. But I just wanted to make sure that we get this up for our anybody who couldn't make it tonight, and just to get it posted this evening sometime. So thanks, guys. You guys all did awesome.